Dr. Srinivas Kakilaya, all his family members who are present here, all comrades and friends who are present in this centenary celebration function. For 2 days the programs which is organized here. I am happy to be associated. मुझे मालूम नहीं कि मैं हिंदी में बातचीत करती रहूं कि इंग्लिश में करूं. What will be? It's okay, English will do. बीच बीच में हिंदी, so English will do. So it's really my privilege to be associated with this program, because B.V. Kakilaya began his life struggle as a student in student activism, participation in freedom movement, and then in the later part he became a trade unionist. He represented assembly, he represented Karnataka people in parliament. He is a loving personality who worked for formation of Karnataka. So a persona in a way complete in himself for the people of Karnataka and for the people of India. To be associated in his memory in this function gives me double pleasure, because I also belong to a freedom fighters family. My father was also a freedom fighter. Kakilaya was born in 1919. My father was born in 1920. So my father also used to tell us lots of stories. He spent in jails, he faced tortures from British police, how they used to work underground. So I can really imagine how Comrade Kakilaya must have spent his life during those hard days when British imperialism was being fought in India. I have been asked to talk about the role of working class in the Indian freedom movement. I'll stick to that topic because I began my life as AISF. I did work in the Women Federation also, but my life from college days itself got associated with the trade union activities, with the employees union, teachers unions. Then nearby there were textile mills. Participating in their day and night programs, strikes and agitations and processions, mobilizing students in support of workers' agitations. That brought me closer to the trade union movement. But being in AISF, having leadership at the state level, then got opportunity to serve at All India level. I became General Secretary of All India Student Federation at national level. That gave me lots of experience and exposure, both. Traveling whole of India, traveling at the international level, attending certain seminars, workshops organized for students, being part of International Union of Students. But with all that, my love for trade unions continued. And that ultimately brought me into AITUC headquarters. There once again the role of a Karnataka person was there. M.S. Krishnan, a tall leader of the trade union movement and a great friend and follower of Kakilaya, he was president of AITUC. And sometime in December 1993, he called me and he said, now we want you to draw into AITUC headquarters. You should give your consent. And I was already ready. I always used to say, I have to continue in the trade union front. I should work here only. So M.S. Krishnan and another person, Gaya Singh, who was a tall leader of steel industry. So first Krishnan ji talked to me, then later on both of them talked to me, and this is how in 1994 I got inducted into the headquarters of AITUC as National Secretary of AITUC. From 94 onwards, from Patna conference, I continued to be in the headquarters as National Secretary, elected every time in our national conference. And then later on, when Gurudas Das Gupta ji fell sick, I served with A.B. Bardhan ji when he was General Secretary as AITUC. I could work under K.L. Mahindra ji, he was General Secretary of AITUC. Then I worked with Comrade Gurudas Das Gupta, he was General Secretary of AITUC. Then in December 2017, he gave charge to me because of his ill health. I was elected in our General Council as AITUC General Secretary. Even though I was trying to understand and learn about the working class history of our country, but it became much more responsibility for me to go deeper into the history. Post 1994, when I myself came to the headquarters of AITUC. And several readings of the books from British archives, books available with the labor libraries in India, and the books available with the AITUC, and then talking to the seniors, the veterans, I could understand how the working class in our country got organized into unions. What were the influences on the working class in India, on the labor movement of our country, and how the participation into the freedom movement became part and parcel of the working class organizing process. So in our country, the workers started getting into unions by the second half of 19th century. With the jute mills and textile mills coming out in large numbers, Indian Railways had already started in 1853. Postal and telegram departments were working. And then in the 20th century beginning, defense industry was also being established. So defense employees also started organizing. So jute workers, textile workers, postal workers, telegram workers, then defense workers. Then we find in 20th century, municipal workers, rural area. So service sector, manufacturing, production. From all sides, the unions started being formed in India. I studied about 2 commissions which were set up by Britishers in the later part of 19th century after some accidents in the textile industry. That was very revealing. In one of the commissioner is asking the worker, when your day starts? He says, when the sun rises. When your day ends? Much after the sun sets. How many working hours? He says, when sun rises, working hour begins. When sun sets, working hour closes. So no fixed working hours. They have to depend on sun rising and then sun setting. In one of the commission after that, when I studied, I got to know, commissioner is asking the worker, when your day starts, when you start working, the worker is replying, when sun rises. So, when do you stop working? He does not say when the sun sets. He says when the employer wants. As because the electricity was introduced in the factories in the lives of people, not in the lives of poor people, rich and affluent, and the employers. So the employer started saying, you will now work at my will. Now sun is not God, I am God. Because I have created a sun here. So don't go by sunset, go by the light I am giving you, that is the God of today. So you have to work till it goes on. That shows only science technology's growth does not free working class from the exploitation. It may increase also. New methods are formed. It depends on those who have to exploit, how do they think about the workers. So entry of power sector, entry of electricity did not ease their life. It increased their working hours. That is what I could understand from the reports of those commissions set up by the Britishers. And in those commissions, when you read those commissions, you understand one another thing. Whole of the family used to work. Male, female, his wife, his children. And I remember after one of the serious accident, the commission set up by Britishers was on this issue, that there has to be amendment in Factory Act to raise the age of the child, at what age the child can work in a factory. And let me tell you, the age allowed for the child to work was, in the Act, 7 years. So after that serious accident in the factory, the age was increased from 7 to 9. Only children below 9 years of age are debarred from working in the factories. Today we talk of child labor in a big way. It's not a new phenomena. The working people, the toiling people, along with their families, have been toiling in the fields. Then they started toiling in the factories. Then they started toiling in urban, rural area, any kind of activity which can fetch them some livelihood for their family members. So the children were working. That was influencing the labor movement all over the world. So it was getting influenced. The Indian labor movement was also getting influenced by that. Second factor which was influencing the labor movement of our country, that factor was the labor movement the world over. When from 1886 on May 1st, the workers of Chicago, who for last 6 years were agitating for fixed working hours, and several of other countries also, workers were agitating for fixed working hours for them, proper wages for them, social security for them. Some care about present, some care about their future. All that was going on the worldwide. In our country also, the impact was there. But especially after May 1st, 1886, when the workers of Chicago, that day decided, okay, nobody is listening to us. From today onwards, we will work only for 8 hours. And they went on strike. On 4th day, there was bomb explosion in their meeting which was going on. And that was actually stage managed by the goons of employers. All the blame came on workers' leaders. 8 of them were jailed. 4 of them were sentenced to death. 2 of them died in jail. Other 2 died later. And that became a signal the world over for the labor movement. The white cloth which became red with their blood So red became their flag. So that is how the red flag with May Day message became a message of the working class struggle the world over. So Indian workers who started mobilizing themselves, organizing themselves, their leaders who mobilized the workers, unionized them, they were influenced with that labor movement which was happening the world over. The third influence on the labor movement of our country was of our own freedom movement. You know, in the second half of 19th century, after 1857, first war of independence was suppressed by the Britishers. Seeds of freedom movement were already sown. Even before 1857, several of the movements came which were suppressed, of farmers, of tribals. But 1857 became a threshold. But that first war of independence was also crushed by the Britishers. But after that, the freedom movement took its own shape. A platform was formed to continue the freedom struggle. But it was in the form of presenting resolutions and petitions to the Britishers. Very soon there was division within that platform. Some were Naram Dal, some were Garam Dal. Some wanted to follow very soft ways. The other section started telling by the end of 19th century, soft ways will not help us, Garam Dal. कुछ तेज करो, कुछ agitation करो, कुछ mass mobilization करो. This is how the things were growing. So by the time 20th century began, what we find? That the Britishers who had tried to divide India prior to 1857 also, and during 1857 also, they wanted Indians to fight amongst each other as Muslims and Hindus on this whole place Ayodhya, which had been settled by a Muslim emperor, that it is not my cup of tea. You have come here bringing your dispute. King is not supposed to intervene into anybody's personal affair, and that is religion. Don't come to me, go back, you communities sit with each other and decide your course, don't come to me. And the issue was settled amongst Hindus and Muslims. 1 year Hindus will organize festival, second year Muslims will organize festivals. Hindus will continue their worship on Ramchabutra and Muslims will continue their namaz in the down level which they termed as mosque. Everything was going on peaceful. But in 1857, during that period, Britishers wanted Maulvi and Pandit. Independently they called them and they wanted them to talk to their communities, not to participate in this movement. Both of them stood together and they said, you can't make us fight. We are brothers in arms. You can't do it to us. And both of them, Maulvi of that time and Panditji of that time, they were dragged out and they were hanged on a tree. एक पेड़ पे उनको फांसी दिया गया. Ayodhya is actually a place of unity, secular values. Dying of Maulvi ji and Pandit ji together, fighting against Britishers. That was the symbol. In 20th century, when the movement was growing, freedom movement was growing, Britishers understood that if you really want to pursue polarization in the society, religious division in the people, you need to institutionalize it. Create institutions which should fight on behalf of their religion in a narrow sense. Because one need not fight for religious space. One should believe whatever they want to believe and pursue whatever you want to believe without having hatred against each other's culture or ways of living. That is how the freedom movement was growing in that sense. But the Britishers very soon realized something more to be done. So in 1905, they brought out an ordinance to divide Bengal on religious lines. And when that came, that became the first opportunity for Indian freedom movement getting converted into mass movement. People's movement, Janta ka Andolan bana. Because people all over India came out under the slogan, Bang Bhang Virodhi Andolan. बंगाल के दो टुकड़े नहीं होने देंगे. Bang Bhang Virodhi Andolan came into the field. That became a mobilizing platform for farmers, for workers, for students, for teachers, for intellectuals, for journalists. All sections of the society were getting mobilized. That converted into a mass movement. That's where Indian workers of all varieties were part of that Bang Bhang Virodhi movement. And the integration of the freedom movement and the workers' movement started happening. Various unions had been formed, as I told you, in various sectors. Then comes 1908. Bal Gangadhar Tilak is arrested by Britishers. And there is a call opposing that arrest of Bal Gangadhar Tilak and asking for his release. Let me tell you, no National Central Trade Union was there. Only labor unions, trade unions were there, sector-wise here and there. No single leader at all India level. But all those people, the leaders at various level, they asked their workers to plunge into this movement. And first time, workers came out of their factories, out of their mills, came on the streets, not for fixed working hours, not for their pay packages, not for social security, on a single demand that Bal Gangadhar Tilak must be released from the jail. Integration of the workers' movement was happening strongly after that. It resulted into two things. Workers becoming part and parcel of freedom movement and looking at the freedom movement something which will salvage itself from its problems. Maybe our miseries, maybe our difficulty, maybe our poverty, maybe the drudgery of my family will be solved if these Britishers go away. My India becomes free and I will be free bird in my country and our problems will be solved. So the working class started looking at the freedom movement as something which will bring great resolutions of their problems. On the other side, leaders of the freedom movement realized the potential of the working class movement. They felt that if these labor movements, if these workers' unions could be brought about at a single platform and formed into a national center, if their energy and potential could be used not only for their own issues and problems, but also as a strong force to stimulate Indian freedom movement, to be part of Indian freedom movement, then our freedom movement will become stronger and stronger. Maybe we will get freedom at the earliest level. So both the things happened. And then we find all those influences which were there, various political streams which were working at the international level and at our country level, they started working hugely among the workers. There was no Communist Party in India, but there were some people calling themselves as communists. Some groups were being formed. They were also organizing unions. There was no Socialist Party in India, but there were some people who were influenced by the socialist movement which was happening in Europe, and they called themselves as socialists, and they were also organizing workers. Then this Indian National Congress platform was there, a platform of freedom movement where all streams of political thought used to participate under that platform, on that platform, through that platform in the freedom movement. So those people who were not with communists or with socialists but called themselves as freedom fighters of Indian National Congress platform, naturally they were also mobilizing unions. There were others who were not at all associated with this politics or this politics or this politics, but they were only influenced with the labor movement which was happening the worldwide. So with the influence of that international labor movement which was continuously advancing, influenced with them, they were also unionizing, calling themselves, we are not in any political parties, but we think the working class has to have its share, has to have human life, has to have proper wages and better future for their children. So in a way, Indian working class had all political shades as other sections of our society. They were being organized and unionized by the people and leaders of all political variety of beliefs and shades. And hence, that kind of trend you see even today. But then 6 years Bal Gangadhar Tilak was in jail. By the time he came out, he started talking about National Center of Trade Unions to be formed. So the communists, the socialists, and those stalwarts of the freedom movement who were not communists or socialists, they all felt there should be one national center of the trade unions. And that is how the preparations began to hold conference. First World War began in 1914, which continued till 1919. During that war, one incident happened internationally, and that was October Revolution in Russia. Tsar was defeated. Lenin led that revolution. In quick succession, 3 revolutions happened. One level, then second level, and the third level, and the Bolsheviks were in power. That 1917 gave a big boost to the labor movement the worldwide, because a nation was born and a leader was claiming that this is the power of workers and peasants. This is the state of workers and peasants in arms. So working class being part of the power, that boosted the working class movement the world over. That also had impact on Indian labor movement. Another thing which happened was the imperialist powers, the world capitalist powers, were frightened of that revolution. They felt if you will not contain the class conflict, there is danger, there is threat of revolutions happening in other parts of the world also. They wanted somehow some methods to be found out where the workers' grievances could be addressed. And they started planning. On the one hand side, League of Nations was built post First World War, and on the other hand side, International Labour Organization was initiated in 1919. Some people try to say, oh, because ILO was formed, that is why perhaps AITUC was formed, to represent Indian labor in the international labor movement. No, it's not true. Indian labor movement was there from 19th century second half. It was growing in leaps and bounds in the beginning of 20th century onwards. It was already into formative stage to have a national center of Indian trade unions. And the preparations for the national conference was begun none other than Gangadhar Tilak, who said the conference should be held in Bombay. And the preparations began. But Bal Gangadhar Tilak ji died in July. The conference got postponed to October. And then finally, on 31st October 1920, first National Center of the Indian working class, the trade union, was born, and that is AITUC, with Kaki Laya ji was so much attached and organized so many unions. So 1920 onwards, then the trade unions, the working class, could respond to all the calls of freedom movement under its banner. It became much more easier to give a nationwide response because the national center was formed and the information could percolate down up to the factory level, up to the mill level, up to the field level. So the participation into the freedom movement by working class enhanced with the formation of AITUC. Let me also tell you, we are in the month of August. Yesterday was Quit India Day. After 4 days, our Independence Day, 15th August. Lots of talks are done about human rights. Several people, several groups are working. Already 10th December has been marked by UNO as the International Human Rights Day. Programs by governments, by the civil society organizations, trade unions and other mass organizations are organized. But with a pride, I should say, it is the labor movement the world over which was the initiator of human rights discourse. It is not something new of a few decades early. It's more than 150 years, one should say, when the workers started telling, we are not animals, we are humans. Don't use us like you use horse, you use elephant, you use camel, you use bull. Every animal is used for your production activities, carrying of your goods from here to there, taking work from them. We are human beings. We are creative. We want hours with our families. We want to be entertained. We want an entertainment because we are creative beings. We are thinking beings. So you can't treat us as humans, animals. So first time asserting that we are humans, so we have some rights. This human right discourse came from the labor movement. I'm not overclaiming. I'm not exaggerating. That is what the talk was about in 19th century. That is what the talk was about 500 years ago when Sufi and saints were coming out again and again. Don't exploit your brethren. Don't suppress them. Don't oppress them. They are fellow beings. They are working for the whole society. The systems functions because of them. You cannot ill-treat them. You cannot exploit them. You listen to them. This is what our Sufi and saints were saying. By the time 18th, 19th century came, the discourse reached to the philosophers, and the philosophers started expressing all the exploitations and the miseries of the workers. But in the middle of 19th century, Karl Marx and his friend Engels, they came out with a communist manifesto and they said, don't keep explaining the miseries of the people. Come out on the street, organize yourself and change the system, change the world. भागो नहीं, दुनिया को बदलो. केवल व्याख्यान नहीं करो, दुनिया को बदलो. And that can't be done with wishes and desires. For that you have to unionize, you have to organize, you have to be collective, you have to have an understanding, and with the understanding you have to be in the field. This is how the human discourse was rising, and that's why labor movement was the first to begin with the human rights discourse. So, contribution of the labor movement, contribution of the working class movement to the civilization is human rights discourse also. Also in the Indian freedom movement, what is our contribution? All of you know that the resolution of complete independence was adopted on the banks of Ravi River in 1929. But the first voice came from the Indian trade unions. In its second session on 1921, in AITUC National Conference, they used to call it session, the resolution was adopted. Resolution for complete independence. Don't keep begging from them. Remember, they told you that defense of India rule is meant only for world war. You help us, support us, we will give you some rights. Don't forget that the same defense of India rule has been used against Indians. And hundreds of people are killed in Jallianwala Bagh in 1919 on Baisakhi Day. So this defense of India rule is used against Indian working people, Indian farmers, Indian intellectuals, Indian students, Indian teachers. And so, we cannot continue having any kinds of hope from these Britishers. The time has come, there should be complete independence call given. And in the second conference, the second session of AITUC in 1921, this complete independence resolution was adopted. It's not only that the working class began the human rights discourse. It is also true that the Indian working class started that slogan, which was 8 years after adopted by the political platform of this country for the freedom movement of our country. We have that credit. Kakilaya's AITUC had that credit, that in 1921, complete independence resolution was adopted in the AITUC conference. And with the growing working class, by 1923, we had already achieved an act for compensation if at the working place, in the working conditions, somebody dies, somebody becomes incapacitated, is hurt badly, demanding compensation for that worker. That Compensation and Maintenance Act of 1923 was achieved during British era. 3 years after that, in 1926, we achieved the Trade Union Act. Trade Union Act 1926, under which all the unions are registered with the Registrar of Trade Unions. We got it during British period. It is not post-independent India's gift to us. It is won over by the struggle of the working class in this country. And that was making the freedom movement realize here is a potential force which is taking confrontation and challenging the British rule. All the jurisprudence started by the Britishers, all the laws enacted here, taken from the British jurisprudence, amendments into those laws were sought by us, and new laws were achieved by us, 1923, 1926. And the movement for fixed working hours, the movement for social security, movement for equal pay for equal work, all was hand by hand going on during that period. And the tall leaders of the freedom movement always wished to be associated with this working class organization. One of our conference was presided over by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Another of AITUC session was presided over by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Another of AITUC session was presided over by V.V. Giriji, who later on became Labour Minister, then Vice President of India, and then President of India. Nehruji became first Prime Minister of India. And Netaji gave a slogan, "Tum mujhe khoon do, main tumhe azadi dunga." Hero of Indian National Army, INA. So all these people and several like this, leaders at the state level, at the national level, They used to associate themselves with the working class organization. And AITUC was the only trade union center at that time, so naturally they used to get associated with the AITUC. INTUC came into being in 1947 at the dawn of freedom movement. HMS came into being in 1948. Then in 60s, some other unions came. In 70, CITU came into being, and then we find in the later period AICCTU being born. UTUC was there, then another split from there, AIUTUC is there, and then we also find in Tamil Nadu the unions were formed. There is LPF, there is ADP. We know nearby your state, Datta Samant started, Shiv Sena started unions. Not only that, then Ila Bain Bhatt, who started work among women workers, she started Seva, then Seva also converted itself into the trade unions in 90s. We have 10 central trade unions registered. Out of them, BMEC is also there, which was organized in 1956 on the initiative of RSS. So 12 centrally recognized trade unions are there. The history of Indian working class pre-1920 and post-1920, till other trade union centers were formed, we don't say it only belongs to us. As a responsible General Secretary of AITUC, I want to say that heritage belongs to whole of labor movement of this country. We don't say it only belongs to us. But this is true that AITUC was not initiated by the decision of any political party. AITUC was initiated by the history. The labor movement grew, labor unions came together. Despite the political differences of leaders, they came under one umbrella in the name of AITUC. And that flexibility, that broadness continues with AITUC. Communist Party of India was founded in 1925. AITUC was born in 1920. Communist Party of India also, its leaders who believed in working class movement started organizing AITUC, and they decided they will only work in AITUC, and they continue to be working in AITUC. There were others who left during 47 and the later period, and some new unions were formed. We don't have grudge against anybody, but what we feel is when we were together under one umbrella, we could have difference of opinion on politics, on philosophy, on ideas, on the ways of going ahead for freeing India or post-India after independence, how to build India. We could hold our opinions, but we could be together, and then together with the working class politics that give us work, give us proper working conditions, give our proper wages, give us social security, give us something for future, equal pay for equal work, all various laws to be implemented for the dignity of labor. This is how the labor movement was. And once the labor movement was fragmented, it did have impact on the working class. And we found how difficult it was becoming with the growth of capitalist class, the difficulty of the working class in achieving or maintaining or continuing with their rights. It happened, and now is the phase, the worst phase which we are facing, when our laws are being forcibly converted into codes, and those codes are snatching away whatever little we have through those labor legislations. All that difficulty is there. So what I was talking about, we have right to association in Indian Constitution. We have maternity benefit directive principles. We do have concept of equal pay for equal work in the Indian Constitution. We do have the concept of living wage. Living wage is highest. Down below is fair wage. And minimum wage is the third rank. We have minimum wage. Even that is supposed to be, whatever methods we have is supposed to be dismantled through the code on wages. We, through struggles in independent India, we got pay commissions for central government and state government employees. We got bipartite wage settlement system for our public sector. And we got minimum wages committees in various states for deciding about minimum wages for the vast workforce of that particular state other than government and the public sector. All that's supposed to be dismantled. So all the achievements can be snatched away is the lesson which the working class has always learned. Just earning some rights and sleeping over that does not help us. Earning those rights and then fighting to defend those rights and fighting to extend those rights and fighting to have more rights in the better direction continues as a battle for the working class, for the trade unions. For the working class, it is very true, government may be right or center or left. If the working class is not alert enough, is not well organized, is not well oiled, is not on streets, their rights will not be defended. They will remain dormant, and when they remain dormant and stagnant, there is always a danger of going down the drain. So there has to be vibrancy continuously. As a trade unionist, I can tell you, and I am saying it with responsibility. I am not saying it just like this because I am addressing you. I said it with responsibility. Whichever government of whichever political shade comes, as far as working class is concerned, they with their working class politics have to defend the rights which they have won, expand the rights which they have won, and move forwards for further bettering their rights. That is the message which we get from our participation in the freedom movement also. And that's why we are so touchy of our rights being snatched away. Because nobody gave us on a platter. Our predecessors fought for it. They won these rights. It was no charity of anybody. If we got the right to unions, it was during British period, Trade Union Act 1926. It is that act got translated into Indian Constitution. It is our continuous struggle for dignity of labor that we got all that in the Constituent Assembly. And Hasrat Mohani represented Indian working class in the Constituent Assembly which was drafting Indian Constitution. All recognition was given to the participation of working class into the freedom movement by the Constituent Assembly, the drafters. That's how we got these directions within Indian Constitution. Once getting directions in the Indian Constitution, we started struggling in the post-independent India to realize it into various laws in independent India. We fought and got first Labour Commission. In India, we got tripartite system, Indian Labour Conference. The recommendations of the first Labour Commission were the result of several of the bipartite and tripartite bodies which were brought into the functioning. Tripartism, government and employers organizations and the labor unions. Bipartism, managements and the unions together to sit and solve their issues. And then direct unions fighting for the minimum wages to be enhanced in every state whenever it must be reviewed in 5 years. There is no dearance allowance for the poor workers. 93% of workforce even today is in the unorganized sector, in informal economy. We could win various laws for our formal sector, organized sector, government public sector, big private sector. We could win certain laws for our factory workers, but those laws get violated, not properly implemented. We got some ESI hospitals, ESI Act in 1948. We got Provident Fund Act, Bonus Act, various legislations. And then finally we also got Contract Labor Abolition and Regularization Act. Prohibition, regularization, abolition. All the regular kind of jobs, perennial nature of jobs, you cannot put contract workers. They must be regularized and they must be paid equal pay to the regular worker. This was a hard-won battle in India's development process, where the workers were toiling in building India. They were simultaneously fighting for their rights also. But what are we finding today? Vast majority of government offices, public sector offices are outsourcing their activities. All perennial nature, regular kind of job, there are contract workers, there are outsourced workers, and their pay is 1/3, 1/4 or half of the regular worker. Same qualification, same designation, more hours of work than the regular employee, but still the wages are half or 1/3 or 1/4. That is the scenario. So in such a situation, since the new economic policy framework came in 1991, government after government tried to weaken the labor laws. And from 2014 onwards, the speed enhanced. And now in 2019, they don't want even to listen to the trade unions. They are bulldozing inside the parliament. So as working class, as the trade unions, all of us are joining hands together. For last 10 years, the broadest possible unity we brought. All 11 central trade unions, one never joins with anybody. All 11 central trade unions, from INTUC to BMS, to all the left-minded trade unions, everybody together. Centrists, left or right, we were moving together. We organized several strikes, several jail bharo, satyagrahas, march to parliament. But from 2015 onwards, BMS is not within our fold. They took a separate line. They had direction of their own masters, not to be part of this agitation process. They told us frankly, only negotiate with government. I said, we have seen those British days also. We have seen those days in independent India also. Working class knows, with folded hands and negotiations, government doesn't listen. Wherever they are ready, we don't say that we go for strike. Our workers, our employees are not interested in strikes. Strike is the last resort. First we only give our charter of demand. We ask for negotiations. We ask for discussions. Then we go for dharnas. We go for black badges. We go for pen down. They don't listen. We go for processions. They don't listen. Then they start harassing, dismissing, terminating. Then we are forced to go on strike. Strike is our last resort. Strike is never a first weapon. So we said that if we are forced to go into strike, we will be forced to go into strike. So we had 3 major strikes during the previous stint from 2009 to 14. We had 3 major strikes in 15, 16 and then in January 19 for 2 days. During present regime, which has taken charge once again, they were in charge from 2014 to 2019. So in independent India also, the role of working class in the freedom movement and role of working class in building nation and the challenges which it is facing today. This has a linkage. When we talk, when we say, how come governments are taking these policies? How the government is trying to sell the whole public sector? Why they are giving all concessions to multinational corporations and Indian corporate houses? Why don't they listen to labor? When we say all these things, they say you are talking politics. If it is question of our living with dignity, question of our labor, cost of our labor, our working conditions, future of our children, education of our children, if that is politics, how can we be devoid of politics? We are very clear. Since formation of AITUC, the slogan was, Indian trade unions free of political parties, free of employers, free of governments. Free of political parties, free of governments, free of employers. That is the Indian working class politics. But we are not non-political. We are not apolitical. We are not against politics. But we are not political parties. We are working class organized into our unions under our own laws. And we have every right to question whichsoever government comes. It is the service giver, it is the producer, it is the manufacturing sector worker, it's the workers who are running the society, who are building the nation. We are not undermining the role of other sections of the society. But who toils at the ground level? It's the workers who toil at the ground level. Closing? It is the workers who toil at the ground level. So it is the workers who should be able to work with dignity and to have their wages with dignity and to have their livelihood secured and to have the better payment of their livelihood. With that, the working class continued with its working class politics. And that's why we always told all our trade union fronts, even the independent unions, some who are not affiliated to the central trade unions, several of the federations or associations of various sectors which are not affiliates of central trade unions, they are on their own great organizations, associations, federations. We find among government employees associations, we find among banks, we find among insurance sector, we find among defense sector, we find among several railways unions also. A few are affiliated under Trade Union Act and the Central Trade Union, but all the other associations or federations are independent. So central trade unions and these federations, associations and the independent federations and associations together have been moving. And that's why, my friend, it is the right subject chosen for this year's function, the program with this centenary celebration of Comrade B.V. Kakilaya, a versatile personality, dedicated his life for the working masses. This is right time to have this subject because working class is really in a serious situation. The challenge of these two codes is too big. Another two codes will be brought in the winter session. And this wage code is dismantling all our wage agreement systems which are in existence. We were demanding 18,000 as minimum wage. They set up a committee that suggested something like 9,500. But when minister introduced code, he came down further. He said only 178 rupees per day. And you have to work it out for 25 days. It comes to 4,628 rupees. So the government wants our 18,000 minimum wage, national minimum wage demand to be minus several digits or divided by 4, it comes to 4,628. This is not even surviving wage. not even surviving wage for the family. And not only that, through this code, they are taking away our rights of fixed working hours. They are saying the working hours will be decided by the appropriate government. So all that history of 150 years ago, which started for the minimum fixed hours, even that they want to dump in the dustbin. Several of the challenges, because there is no time to deal on those codification. That subject is not there. Some other time, codification of labor laws, what bad impact it is going to have on the working class and the trade unions, that can be there. It's a dangerous code. The other code, occupational safety health, is mixing working conditions and the welfare measures, which can't be done. You cannot equate a worker going down the sewer line, or the worker of atomic energy, or the worker of mine area, or the worker of steel industry. Every sector has specific diseases, treatments, welfare measures, then coming out of that. So working conditions vary, the welfare measures will vary. You cannot give one shoe to everybody's foot. You have to have a diverse thing and decentralized manner to look at the condition of workers of various sectors and accordingly make the laws. But they are amalgamating 4 laws into the wage code. They are amalgamating 13 laws into this occupational safety health code. So whosoever is covered under law will be excluded. It is just opposite to the claim of government. Government is saying we are reaching every worker. We trade unions are saying you are further excluding the workers. In the occupational safety health code as well as in the wage code. And it will be worst when the social security and industrial relations code will come. So the days are very bad. This was right time to remember Kakilaya, to get lots of energy, to be rejuvenated, to be more determined, to be more committed, not to be afraid of, not to be lying down, learning from them. We could challenge the Britishers, we could challenge the Indian governments, and we will challenge the present government also. If it doesn't stop crushing the working class will never take it lying down. We will fight, we will mobilize, we will win. Ultimately, victory belongs to those who fight. And that is where I conclude paying my deeply felt homage to the memory of Comrade Kakilaya and the contribution he made to our society. Thank you very much. Formal inauguration.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Amarjit Kaur. ನಮ್ಮ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯ ಹಿರಿಯ ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕ ಮುಂದಾಳು, ಭಾರತ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಸ್ಟ್ ಪಕ್ಷದ ಜಿಲ್ಲಾ ಕಾರ್ಯದರ್ಶಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದವರು, ನನ್ನ ತಂದೆಯ ಆಪ್ತ ಸಂಗಾತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದವರು ಬಿ ಕೆ ಕೃಷ್ಣಪ್ಪ ಅವರಿಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಅಮರ್ಜಿತ್ ಕೌರ್ ಅವರಿಗೊಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಕಾಣಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ.